Thank you for taking time for us. Could you please state your name, your profession, and for a bit introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I'm Chantal Ryan. I am founder of the video game studio We Have Always Lived in the Forest, and I am also founder of the Women Leaders in Games professional network.
So is this your first time here, or have you actually been to Reboot conferences, either here, the blue one or the red version?
Yeah, it's actually my first time at any Reboot, so I'm very excited. Croatia is ridiculously beautiful, so it's kind of like a fairy tale conference. Yeah, I've been very delighted. I was just in San Francisco for GDC, and it was a typhoon and terrible weather, and it's just so delightful to be here after that. It's so much better.
Yeah, a bit of fresh air, at least.
Yes.
And so, since your first time here, and you also spoke about semantics, symbols, your games, and you talk with other people, so could you tell me more about your speech here that you had today?
So, today's talk of my 4 that I'm giving here was called The Meaning and the Chaos, Semiotic Design Principles. And so what I really wanted to talk about when I was addressing the games industry was the concept of putting meaning into the games that we make and thinking about what it takes to make meaning and what kind of meaning we want to give to the world. And so the way that I personally approach this in my game design is through something called semiotic design. And semiotic design is about understanding that all the things that we experience are actually representations of ideas. And so if we kind of trace back how we come to represent ideas, then we can figure out how we came to imbue meaning into the things that we find meaningful. And in doing that, we can figure out how to put really meaningful things into the games that we make because we understand the processes of the way that meaning becomes part of things.
Yeah, you also spoke about the logical language of programming and the impact that it actually makes. So do you have any personal favorites of video games who kind of inspired you or made you think about stuff or made you feel either happy or sad? Anything basically that made you either emotional or striving to get something more out of it? Do you have anyone?
I have so many. A game that I always bring up when people ask me about my inspirations is a game I played when I was a very young child. It was a game called Creatures, and it was essentially the very first artificial life simulation that had visuals and that had a real intent to create this virtual biological life. So in Creatures, you had these little cute, adorable furry creatures called Norns, and they were actually programmed by a biologist and a roboticist. And these creatures were programmed with the ability to learn things, to transmit behaviors, and also they had all sorts of kind of brain chemicals and hormones programmed into them based on real life. So as these little creatures went through the world, they were having experiences in that world. They were having chemical-driven feelings about those experiences, and they were learning behaviors in response to those feelings. And then not just that, but they were able to transmit those same feelings and behaviors to others, so that as time went by and they bred, they actually began to create culture, because the experiences of the Norns that came before were shaping the way that the new ones felt about the world. So it's a really effective kind of cultural simulation, and it was really profound for me because it showed me what video games were capable of doing. They were allowing us to kind of see the way that life is formed and behaviors are formed and meaning is formed.
So what do you strive in your games? Do you have a specific genre that you usually make? Or are you trying to get versatility in genres? Or what is your preferred narrative, what you do at the moment?
Yeah. So we're a fairly new studio. We have one small release game, and then we have a much larger project that we've been working on for 2 years. That's called darkwebSTREAMER. And I call that a genre-breaking game. And that's because there's really no game like it out there. It's very strange. It's a combination of RPG, simulation, roguelite, mechanics, emergent narrative. It's all procedurally generated, and there's some inspirations from adventure games, point and click type things as well. So kind of like everything I loved from video games across my life, I kind of like took the elements about it that I loved and kind of like shaped them into a new video game experience, and that's something I am absolutely focused on going forward as a studio. We are very invested in emergent narratives, and what emergent narrative means is games that don't have pre-made stories, but games that create new stories on the spot in response to what kind of randomly happens in the game, as well as player decisions that they make. So everyone has their own unique story every time they play.
So how difficult is to make this stuff? Because it feels like if something is randomly generated, is there any chaos in it, or actually life finds its way, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the reason I talk about chaos so much is because I kind of dwell in chaos. I love chaos. I love harnessing chaos. And so the game that we're making, it's actually in a way driven by chaos because it is randomly generated all the time. So we don't know what the game is going to put out. The best we can do is kind of create frameworks that will structure experiences in ways that are slightly predictable, in ways that we kind of make sure that they are fun and they make sense, but are still harnessing the random chaos of the universe in order to put things that we didn't expect into the game. So I'll give you an example. In my game there are hauntings, so you might wake up in the middle of the night and we'll have made an event where something happens in a room, and you might have streamed with a doll. The game is about role-playing as a streamer. So you might have streamed with a haunted doll, and you'll wake up, and it'll be a randomly generated room of the house in which this doll has kind of ended up. They will have randomly generated actions that they might have taken. So the doll might have written a message in blood on the wall. That message will be randomly generated, so we don't know what it's going to say, if there is blood on the wall. And then the doll might take a number of actions that we created some certain paths for it to take, but all the language in that path is also randomly generated. So they might take a number of many random actions, and you might go into a room and find that the doll is crawling backwards around the floor, covered in blood. And none of that we would have pre-scripted. It was all kind of the game harnessing the random chaos generation to fill all the gaps in with something surprising.
Yeah, so how is the feedback when you speak to other gamers, game developers, the community in general? So do you have positive or negative feedbacks, some kind of setbacks, or are people generally pleased with your games and your work and your creation?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's been overwhelmingly positive. I am always very humbled by how enthusiastic people are about the fact that we are making something that is really new, that people have never seen before. When we show the game at industry events, at trade shows, at places where gamers come to try new games, I found we've always had huge crowds, and the feedback we get from those crowds are always like, wow, I've never seen something like this before. It is so exciting to see something that we have never seen and experience something that is new. And I think people are really hungry for that. I think that, this is kind of like where the future of games is ready to go, is these really fresh experiences where we're not remaking the same things anymore, but we're breaking all these boundaries and we're bringing something new, because people have grown up on games. So, like, people have experienced every kind of game that's out there now, so it's time for us to bring them a new experience.
Yeah, do you think then that the market is saturated, or just that either is it too much of a games out there, or just do you believe that then there is a good and bright future for games, especially your games or the industry in general?
Yeah, I think there is absolutely room for all sorts of games. I think that some people really love familiarity. Some people really love new experiences. Some people love having a mix of both in their lives. And so there is space for everybody, but I think that the industry has been weighted toward more kind of like traditional expectation setting games, and games that fulfill already set expectations. So I do think that the industry, I heard, is leaning more toward more innovative types of games. I think that with the advent of generative AI in particular, we're going to see games that are being made in ways that we have never seen games be made before. I made all the AI in my game myself, so our game is actually very heavily AI powered. This was long before things like GPT came out, but I found that these tools that we have made for generative AI that surprise us allow us to design in ways that people weren't formerly able to design. And that is why we're able to bring these new experiences. So I think that as these technologies become more available to other game developers, we're going to see very new, different, exciting kinds of experiences. And I'm really excited for it.
So thank you for your time. I hope it will be a good and chaotic experience. Good luck with your games and enjoy your stay here.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.